The reading for today comes from Ephesians 2:11 through 22, and I'll read some of it, but I might skip over it. You'll get the idea. Therefore remember that at one time you Gentiles in the flesh, called the uncircumcision by what is called the circumcision, which is made by the flesh of hands. Remember that you were alienated at that time, separated from Christ, alienated from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers to the covenant of promise. But now in Christ Jesus, you who were once far off have been brought near in the blood of Christ, for he has broken down the dividing wall of hostility by abolishing in his flesh the law of commandments and ordinances, that he might create in himself one new man in place of the two, so making peace, and might reconcile us both to God in one body through the cross, thereby bringing the hostility to an end. So I'm going to stop right there and talk about this sacrifice for a minute, because we get the idea sometimes that Jesus had to sacrifice himself to God to make God not be mad at us anymore. I don't think that's, I could go on about that, but I don't think that's the case here. But let's take it for a second that if we read the Bible from forward to, backward to forward, and start at the beginning, we see that there was a lot of sacrifice, and it was kind of bloody, so you can see that it evolved into something a little bit different here with Jesus. But the point I think this writer is making is that by this sacrifice, however you want to construe it, Jesus did away with this legalism that was a real burden to the Jews and anybody else who tried to be one. And the whole point of this law, this legalism, was to separate and divide. First, it was used to separate the Hebrews from the Gentiles, and then it was used to separate the clean Jews from the unclean ones, and then all this to separate the righteous from the unrighteous, and the good guys from the sinner Gentiles. But when Jesus did away with that, he did away with the whole concept of separation, because the law was designed to separate. When he threw those laws out, there was no excuse, and there's no more excuse for us to be separate from our neighbors and from each other. So what does this unity look like? Well, I would say it certainly isn't uniformity, because it really just relies on the one essential thing, which is loving God and love our neighbors. But I'm going to read something here that to me sums up this whole concept of unity, and it's by Thomas Merton. He was a pretty materialistic guy. He was born in like 1915, and he went from being a kind of a hedonistic guy to a scholar and then a monk, of all things. And he lived in this Trappist monastery in Kentucky where they had a vow of silence. But anyway, one day he goes to town, Louisville, and this is what he said. It's slightly edited. In Louisville, at the corner of 4th and Walnut, in the center of the shopping district, I was suddenly overwhelmed with the realization that I loved all those people, that they were mine and I theirs, that we could not be alien to one another even though we were total strangers. It was like waking up from a dream of separateness, of spurious self-isolation in a special world of renunciation and supposed holiness. This sense of liberation from an illusory difference was such a relief and such a joy to me that I almost laughed out loud. I have the immense joy of being man, a member of a race in which God himself became incarnate. As if the sorrows and stupidities of the human condition could overwhelm me, now I realize what we all are. And if only everybody could realize this. But there is no way of telling people that they are all walking around shining like the sun. So my devotional takeaway from this is, go shine like the sun.